This screencast is to support the teaching of this lesson, which is Lesson 11 from Language to Go Pre-Intermediate by G. Cunningham and S. Mohammed, published by Longman. You're going to need just a few things. Here's the student's book notes. And the teacher's book page has all the answers and some information on the grammar on it as well, very useful. And you've got the grammar notes from the back of the student's book. Remember that they're all in one file on your Teams, MS Teams, under class materials, okay? But here is Lesson 11. Used to, didn't used to, and this gives you a good indication of the level of knowledge that students at a pre-intermediate level might need about this grammar. And remember, with Language to Go, you've got an additional section that has some controlled practice activities for each of the lessons. Again, you'll find all of these in Teams under class materials, and this is the all controlled practice activities, and here are the ones for Lesson 11. I think this one down here with the pictures is something we'll talk about when we look at controlled practice. Looks like quite a good task. So what's this lesson all about? Well, the grammar focus is used to and didn't used to and did you used to. So the positive, negative and question forms of used to talk about the past. And so this right-hand page has introduction of the grammar and controlled practice and freer practice. And before that, we have some vocabulary and a reading. And this reading provides the context for this language practice. All right, so let's look at how the lesson could start off. So the first activity in the book is this vocabulary and speaking, but the teacher's book notes has got a couple of ideas for how to start the lesson, how to have a lead-in to warm up the students. It's in the way in section on the teacher's book notes. One of the ideas is to focus on shoes, which I think would be nice. So listing different types of shoes, and maybe you could have some pictures. People could talk about what are their favourite kinds of shoes, things like that. But as I say, ideas in the teacher's book notes. And then it's a good idea to focus on some verbs here, some verb-noun collocations, useful patterns for the students. I would get them to try to do this first. So try and put the verbs into the sentences, maybe do one or two as an example together, and then say to the students, right now I want you to have a look and write down the verbs that go in each of the sentences. And at the end you can get them to talk together as a way of working out where the problem areas lie, so you can listen to that while they talk together about the answers, and then go through the answers together. And then it's nice to bring in a bit of speaking practice. So question 2 there, in pairs ask and answer the questions about people and families. You know, you could do this in breakout rooms, or you could do it as open pairs in the main room. Do an example yourself first to model the task, get a student to ask you a couple of the questions, and then you can say to them, okay, Ahmed, you ask a question, and Sarah, you answer. And do it like that. And then we've got the reading section. Now remember, when we're doing a listening or a reading lesson, we're thinking about different stages. So first we want to raise interest in the topic, and if you've done your lead-in about shoes, then you will have done that. And then we need to possibly pre-teach some vocabulary so that they are not blocked from overall understanding of the text or being able to do the tasks. Okay? And then you need an easy initial task, preferably given with a time limit, to encourage quick reading. Not to hover over the words that they don't know, but to focus on what they can do. And then a more complex task. So when I'm looking at a listening or a reading in a book, I think, well, are all these stages there, and are they suitable and useful for my students? Now, we've raised interest if we talk about shoes at the beginning. We have focused on some of the vocabulary here. So I think we've probably raised interest in different customs and different shoes, which is what this is about. So the first stage has been achieved. So you've got to think, well, what about pre-teaching vocabulary? Now, if you've already covered high heels and platform shoes and sandals in your lead-in, then I think you've covered all the necessary vocabulary. I don't think they're going to need anything else. So then this task here, number 3, they match with these pictures. That looks like a good first task to me. And then number 4 is a true-false, a more complex task. So all the stages are already there. I don't think anything needs changing or adapting. So you can focus on just thinking about how you can move the students through these activities, encouraging those skills of reading for gist with exercise number 3 and reading for specific information with exercise number 4. The only things in terms of vocabulary that I think might be problematic are possibly aristocracy here and Anglo-Saxon here. I wouldn't bother pre-teaching them because they're not particularly useful. So I would suggest that after they've done exercise 3 where they've matched these together, in the feedback you could just say, give a quick definition of Anglo-Saxon and aristocracy when you're doing the feedback, just so that when they do the second task they're not held up by that. But I don't think you need to go through the usual sort of pre-teaching vocabulary stage. Okay. So after the reading, it goes straight into the grammar. So I think it might need some kind of round off of the reading before moving into the grammar. So you could have a speaking task there, perhaps talking about shoes in their country, or anything that you think might lead on from the reading. A couple of simple discussion questions to answer with their partner or as a group before moving on to the next stage of the lesson. And so here's the grammar section here. And when I look at a grammar section, I think, right, are there examples from the context? And yes, there are. Here they are. And I think, is there a way for the students to be involved? Are there questions for the students to answer? And yes, there are here, focusing on the meaning. I would think, is there any way to elicit the form from the students? And yes, I could elicit the form from these sentences, or I might want to create a task of my own. So all the basic ingredients are there, so that's good. I would start with the examples, so focus the students on the examples, and then guide them through these questions here. So you could let them read the questions, decide what their answers are, and then come in together and answer those questions, and then guide the students through with some concept checking questions, and possibly timelines as well might be useful. The teacher's book's got some useful notes about this. So take a sentence when you're checking meaning and using concept questions. It's hard to check meaning with a question form. So I'd say they used to throw shoes at the bride. So you'd say, well, did they do that in the past? Yes, they did. What about now? No, now they don't. They tend to tie them to the car now, so it's different. And then you could say, well, was this something that happened once or many times? And it happened many times. It was a habit in the past. Okay, and then you're covering the key meaning of used to there. So just to recap, focus them on the examples first. Get them to look at these questions and decide on their answers by themselves, and then come in and check those answers. And then look at the examples and use some concept checking questions to guide the students through. And then we've dealt with meaning. Don't forget to also do the same with the past simple. Okay, concept questions for those as well. We haven't focused on form. So at this point you can elicit the form from the examples that you already have. Or you could put up some sentences with some incorrect form and elicit from them what's wrong with it as a way of focusing on the form. Don't fall into the trap of spelling. This is the issue with used to that I've fallen into many times. In the positive form, we have used to with the D on the end, but in the question and the negative, because we have did and the past is here, we don't have a D on the end of use. But the pronunciation just doesn't change. Don't let it affect your pronunciation. It's exactly the same. So what did they used to do? They used to throw shoes. Poor people didn't used to wear red shoes. So do you see that the pronunciation of used to is exactly the same, no matter what the spelling is, okay? And also, when you drill it, which is what we're focusing here on in number 6, but I think you can just do some drilling yourself rather than use the recording. What they're focusing on there is the weak form of to. So don't find yourself drilling used to, everybody. No, because when you put it in a sentence, listen, what did they used to do? They used to throw. Poor people didn't used to wear. When you put the verb in, the verb is stressed, wear, do and throw, and the to becomes t, becomes weak. Okay? They used to do, they used to throw, they used to wear. And I think that's important with used to, because when students are hearing it, they need to know that that t sound actually refers to the to. So a good amount of drilling would be really useful, focusing on that weak form of the to. I think for controlled practice you have a choice. You can use this activity here, which focuses again on customs. Or you could use this one from the extra controlled practice tasks. I think it's quite nice to use the pictures. So as you can see, each one has a set of 2 pictures, and the students need to decide whether it's used to or didn't used to, and to write a sentence. So you could do a couple together speaking, and then you could give the students time to write the other sentences and then go through it together. And remember in the feedback to focus on the pronunciation of used to do, used to wash, used to smoke, didn't used to smoke, etc. Okay? So now we want to activate this language in some freer practice. There's a few ideas here, so I think you need to sort of pick and choose and think about what you'd like to do. Here are some pictures about Britain in the past, and the idea is here in 8 number 1 is to look at the photos and talk about past customs in Britain. This might get the students' brains whirring on the idea of past customs in Britain. And then that will lead them to number 2. Was it the same for people where you come from? All right. And then here, this could be a good set of prompts to provide scaffolding for a speaking task. What customs have changed? Now, as usual with a freer speaking task, you need to scaffold it. You've provided the language of used to. You might want to provide a model of what they can talk about. Provide some prompts, and there are some here. And then give them preparation time. So think about incorporating some of those aspects to this activity. Providing a model and preparation time and providing these prompts, I think, will be really useful. And then letting the students speak. If you're doing it in the main room together, make sure the listeners have a role, something whether they agree or disagree, whether it's the same or different in their country, and whether you can do that whether they're in breakout rooms or in one room together. Make sure the listeners have something to do. Be a good idea to listen and note down any examples of good language use you hear or any examples of errors. And then after the activity, you can focus on content first by saying, did you find out anything interesting or unusual? And then focus on accuracy by either saying, or I heard someone say blah, 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 blah. Can you correct that? Or I heard someone say blah, 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 blah. Is that correct or not correct? Or you could share a Word document where you have typed in those correct and incorrect sentences, and the students can correct them or praise them as a class. Okay, so yeah, useful lessons for students. I don't think that used to will be new for them. However, students notoriously get confused with used to and usually, and the other use of used to, which is I'm used to living in Great Britain, or I'm used to driving on the left, which is a different structure to what we've got here. So there's plenty to get confused about. So make sure you've got nice clear CCQs and nice clear examples to help the students stay on track.